Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Shields. Welcome to Next in Media. My guest this week is Ronan Shields, not related. He is a reporter at Digiday, second time on the show. He is an expert in all things ad tech, particularly Google, which we're going to talk about. Welcome, Ronan. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, thanks for having me back. I think it's been 2 years or so since I was last on the mic here, but much appreciated.
Yeah, it's been 2 years too long. I know that. So I'm excited to chat with you again, and particularly given the timing of this crazy Google antitrust trial in DC that is confusing, juicy, could have humongous ramifications for our industry. I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around some of it, so I thought I would get your help.
Thank you.
It's going to be hard to sum it up, but some of the stuff that's come out has been embarrassing. You can kind of get a sense of where the judge is going. You get a sense of Google's argument. This is on the heels, of course, of them losing the search antitrust case. So do you have an overall impression of what has happened so far?
Sure. Well, first of all, just to clarify, this current case, the ad tech case, as opposed to the search antitrust case, is taking place in the Eastern District of Virginia, not DC. The previous search trial took place in DC, and still waiting on an appeal for that one. Of course, Google lost that. It was ruled to be a monopolist by Judge Mehta in this. And that was a marathon 10-week case, which started in September of last year. And this current one, which is against the ad tech portion of the Google business, which, of course, and we'll get into this a bit later, is a much smaller part of Google's business. And that is one that has been running for, at this point, we're recording on the 26th of September. It has been running for 3 weeks. 2 weeks of that was the DOJ's case, and Google opened its defense on the start of the third week of it, and by all accounts, it's expected to close today on the 26th of September. So I imagine, as listeners are hearing us speak, we're probably going into closing arguments and rebuttals. That will be the week commencing September 30, and the case is expected to conclude, all things told, by the midpoint of November. I was speaking to some experts, and they seem to think that a finalized decision might be arrived at just prior to the Thanksgiving break. So obviously,
before you get into your impressions, why does that take so long? I mean, I hate to be naive. I know the government things move slowly, but based on television, you have a closing argument and then something happens quickly. Why will this take so long?
I have no idea. I'm sorry. I know that's the tremendous insight that everybody tunes in for.
Right.
But this case has actually been incredibly quick compared to the search case. That search case, that was 10 weeks of trial, then a very long hiatus in terms of courtroom action. I don't know what went on with deliberations in the background, but that verdict, I think, I may be a little off on timings here, but that was about March or April time. It was certainly the spring of 2024 when that came up. This case is just presided over by Judge Brinkema. Anybody who I know has been down there, all the courtroom attendees, has said just how quick, by comparison, this being is.
Which you might not expect, right? You would think this is complicated, this is confusing, this is going to take a while.
Certainly up in your brief, according to the experts that I've spoken to that are down there. The reason why it's brief is, and this is all this legal terminology is new to me, there is a rocket docket, is the phrase. That's new to me. But that is why this one is comparatively quick. So while it is, taking a little while, I guess when you have expensive lawyers that are probably paid by the hour,
you move it along.
They like to make their arguments. In fact, it was a contact of mine just sent me a link to a Bloomberg article dated yesterday, September 25th, where the Google CEO, Sundar Pichai, is basically saying he will appeal any and all
they've already made this decision, essentially. Yeah,
the same source that sent me a link to this was saying, look, we will probably be talking about this in 2030. It will make the drawn-out process that was Google cookies and all things sandbox seem like just a moment in time by comparison.
So I want to get to what the ramifications of various verdicts are, but it sounds like it's going to be a moot point for a while, but which is kind of crazy. But let's so like overall, if you sounds like you're learning a lot on the fly here, as we all are, about how these things work. If you're not immersed in these kind of trials, what is your overall impression? If you were watching this and it was an episode of a TV show, how's it looking for both sides?
Most people I speak to, and this is how I inform my opinions, seem to think this is going very, very much in the DOJ's favor, and probably just worth pointing out at this stage. The DOJ is obviously alleging that Google is a monopolist for this ad tech business, and the business that many people listening would probably know colloquially as DoubleClick. That is the ad server, ad exchange, and even to an extent, it's a DBM, DoubleClick Bid Manager.
Right.
Or DV360 as it's known now, and arguing for a breakup of Google. Most experts that I've spoken to who are down there and in the courtroom and seeing how it goes, being able to read in between those lines. Obviously, there's a lot of reporting restrictions around the courtroom itself. There's no electronics are allowed.
Yeah.
So it was very old school. I had a
It's torture for some of these people that are on their phones all day long to be in this thing.
Yeah, well, my coworker, Marty Swant, he was down there for the opening week. And what he would have to do is call me as they break for lunch and literally just telephone, call it down the phone. Yeah. And I'd have to sit there and take notes and it's
like out of an old movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very, very old school. But most people seem to think it is going in the government's favor. But I guess we can get into a little bit later.
And I guess because they've got the goods, so to speak, because they've got so much damaging information, or is it because they're telling a really compelling story that makes Google look monopolistic?
Well, yeah, look, I think that's why there was so much intrigue about the DOJ presented its case and its evidence. All those emails and internal communications that came out where basically you had a lot of Google or former Google execs basically saying in their internal chats, so those logs were there, basically saying how they're confirming their take rate, 20%, probably a little bit higher than others, and basically saying how that take rate couldn't be supported if it weren't for the other side of the Google business, which is demand. And basically, there was a lot of evidence, and forgive me, try to choose my words carefully here, so with don't want to come across bias in any way, which I'm not. But there was a lot of evidence there that would support the theory that there was some tying being a critical point of the government's argument, that it is purposely wrapped up publishers who are, being seen as the main kind of victim in all of this. How publishers are being, essentially, once they use DFP, they're essentially forced to use the entirety of the rest of the Google stack at the expense of both their bottom line and those of alternative ad tech companies. There's a lot of internal communications. I think they were the most damning. I mean, there was a lot of experts who went down there and testified from the witness box. Not to name names, but a lot of them, you already knew what their opinion was. If you're listening to this, you probably know that Brian O'Kelly was a long time Google critic.
Yeah, he was trying to compete with them, right, with his own exchange, and so that's obvious. You would expect a lot of the publishers to be grumbling, and they've been very direct. I guess, what do you think? It's hard to sum up this pretty complicated argument with all these different leaked documents and emails, but what's looking, from what you can gather, what looks worse, that they had that their products were so tied together that the market had no choice. You couldn't work without them, or that they sort of seemed to be, thumbing the scale, playing games, manipulating auctions, are either of those coming through as being the worst thing, or am I missing something, or is it all of it kind of?
I think it's all equally doesn't look great for them. I think, sorry, not to dodge a punch there, but I think one is as bad as the other. Like Google's defense seems to be, and obviously I'm not their counsel in any way, shape, or form, but it would appear on evidence that Google's defense is, well, look, there are a ton of competitors out there. You know, there's Microsoft, which now owns Xandr, what was AppNexus.
Yep.
That Amazon has its own stack. Facebook tried to launch an ad server, and that there is a lot of competition, and they just do it better. Which there's an argument in that, I guess, to say that like I think this works better. Like, sorry, you can't you can't force us to break up just because we're good at our jobs. I think it is that tying and that manipulation of the mechanics, and there was a lot of evidence that was admitted that seemed to suggest that that was the case. So I think that's probably the one that, if Google does lose the case, I do think a lot of that will be the smoking gun, as it were.
Yeah.
If of course.
Based on who you're talking to, and my assumption is that there are people in the industry that are bitter and say, you know, my ad tech company, my publisher could have been bigger if something was done years ago. Now it's probably too late. But I'm assuming most constituencies are rooting for Google to lose. But is there a group that is, from the folks you're talking to, much more invested? Like, are the publishers particularly like dying for Google to get nailed? Is it the other ad tech companies? Is it their rivals? Like, because that's a double-edged sword. What is the mood out there?
Yeah, I think you're right in your perception that most people are like boo anti-Google. I think that is Google is presenting a lot of small businesses. This is a lot of these big tech platforms. You know, they like to publicly espouse how they help small businesses because it's, you know, they help the little guy.
Yeah.
And this kind of like,
what could all these companies then were able to build on us like that?
The mom and pop stores.
Yeah. How can that be bad?
The backbone of the American economy. That's certainly a line that Google is using, and all of the Facebook, or Meta, is they're quite keen to roll that line out. So they use it in their marketing, and Alphabet Google is using it in its defense. And I guess the insinuation being that these critics was kind of like that embittered middle of small to mid-sized ad tech companies. And that's the argument. One nuance, though, I will put in, and this is my co-worker, Seb Joseph. He's been digging a little bit into this and has published some articles on our website, Digiday.com, to document this. How there are some publishers that are just, while not cheering for Google, are a little bit wary of, well, hold on, what happens after this? Because if Google is forced to divest its ad stack, right, sell-side ad stack, which is what the government is advocating for, that could really mess up our monetization strategy. We're going to take a big hit in the interim. So
it's be careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Exactly. I wrote an article with exactly that headline based on some research that we did, and it was really quite split. What we essentially asked the respondents was, will a divestiture of the sell side ad stack, as Google is advocating for, would it be effective, particularly with what Google is proposing with Privacy Sandbox, which is effectively the removal of the sell side ad serving function and the SSP, putting that function, those traditional functions, into the Chrome browser.
Right.
And so would an actual divestiture of those parts of the business, would it be successful? Is this Google basically playing 3D chess, thinking we're already a couple of moves down the line? And let's just divest this comparatively small part of our business, which brings the most liabilities in terms of privacy.
And it might have mattered to us a lot back in the day when we were building our business, but it doesn't matter that much anymore. You're talking about the network.
Yeah, that's right. The small and declining part of their business. Right. And some observers that I speak to are thinking like, they've baked it in, they've priced it in. This is it. Doesn't matter what the government does. That's one theory.
Yeah.
That's one theory. So while to get back to your original question, while most people are advocating against Google, some are kind of saying, yeah, okay, all right, it'd be great if Google or big tech, this sort of big tech scion, gets a blackened eye or a bloody nose. But we got to think about what the actual outcome, what the remedies would be, what are the ramifications of those. So some are saying, to your words, yeah, we've got to be careful what we wish for here. We might just get it.
I want to come back to a couple of your theoretical outcomes, but you made me think of this. I wonder, you might think that this could be in a moment where for a Brian O'Kelly or somebody to be building something that is ready to go if Google has to divest, a whole bunch of stuff. Like, look, hey guys, we got a nice, clean, transparent new platform for you. It's going to, you're a little scared. Switching is going to be rough, but we'll be right there for you. Is anybody there to pick up the pieces? Or is it like so uncertain that no one's going to bother building something like that right now?
There's a lot of uncertainty, but what I'm hearing from a lot of the corp dev contacts that I speak to is that there are those sources, those bankers are kind of leaning in, wetting their lips in anticipation of such a scenario.
Okay.
But, to the point I was making earlier, Google fully intends to, Google is appealing the search case that they lost.
Yeah.
So you would have to assume that if the judgment goes against them, in this case, that they'll just bring that playbook out again, and this could take years. So I think while there may be a lot of bankers and corp dev execs leaning in, it's their job to anticipate such developments. I think, those seal stack, etc. It may be a little bit premature to start finalizing them.
Right. Okay. You had mentioned a couple of different scenarios, and there's been some stuff floated. And I think if I remember correctly, even before all this, Google proposed, "Hey, we'll break up this part of our business, so let's avoid this whole messy trial." And the government said no. But again, who knows what's going to happen? But what are the likely? Is it, hey, you've got to just sell your network or spin off your network? Hey, you've got to break up all the pieces, or you've got to take AdX and all the other pieces and make them a new company, or you got to shut down this part of your business and focus on something else. What are the likeliest outcomes based on who you're talking to, or what would be? Is there one that Google would rather have happen?
Gosh, how long do you have? There's so many scenarios to play out, right?
It's true.
So, per my understanding, and this was reported on, I forget which outlet reported it, but it was, Google did offer to, the pre-trial, Google did offer to break up the sell-side ad tech per the DOJ's request, but have it as a completely separate company within the Alphabet family. So maybe,
yeah, that's right. Which they were on. That was like, yeah, Google. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that their eyes glazed over at that and were like, no, we're going to court. I also heard from some sources that as a remedy, they proposed opening up YouTube to third-party DSPs. And just for anybody listening in, currently, you can only buy advertising inventory on YouTube via the Google owns DSP DV360. I had heard that they also offered that up, but that was like you completely just waved out. Right? No, we're going to court. I personally would anticipate that if Google does lose the case, that would be one remedy that they'll be forced to do, on top of some sort of divestiture. What would it look like? Oh, I don't know, Mike. I think if I really knew the answer to that, I'd be a much richer man than I am. I probably
I mean, there has been, you've probably read the same thing. There's been theories out there from experts, including Terry Kawaja from Luma, that this actually could be a good outcome for Google. This new thing would make a lot of investors a lot of money, takes away their headaches, and it's probably what should have happened a while ago. Could this actually be not so bad for Google if it was the right way?
Well, you try to tell me an investment banker was encouraging.
I know, that's kind of shocking.
That's a shocker. Yeah. Could it be? Yeah, I think it could. I think it would ultimately, while it may be a bit of a blackened eye and bruise the ego that they're forced to divest our business, I just think longer term, more strategically, this could just get rid of a headache and let Google, or Alphabet, should we say, focus on its other longer term goals. I probably should have looked this up, but
reinventing search and making flying cars and all those things they want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I think probably the biggest subscription part of the business is GCP, the cloud business. They're equivalent to the to AWS, which is the market leader. I think they really want to focus on that stuff that Wall Street will like, not this sort of, by comparison, small ad tech side of the business, which is revenues are dwindling. Maybe that's too harsh a word, but certainly they go down quarter after quarter. Huge privacy liabilities brings them nothing but torrents of criticism from the industry, people that you and I speak to, or maybe our
just
listeners.
by the optics of playing this, right? All these different roles doesn't make everybody happy. So why not just get that out of your life?
Yeah. So I would tend to agree with Terry's observation that this might actually be, while a bit of an ego blow, reputationally, just eyes on the prize, those big subscription businesses reinventing the world, the flying cars, as you say, all that stuff. So I think
taking on TV with YouTube, all stuff where there's a lot of upside.
Yeah, I think it might just be goodbye, but maybe a welcome one.
Right.
So yeah.
It's funny that you brought up the fact that you can only buy YouTube through Google's DSP. This was it seemed like a very small thing, but I remember when that happened, and there were ad tech companies out there like TubeMogul, if you remember, running campaigns, hey, Google's a monopoly, what the hell? And it's funny, I don't know if enough of us weren't listening. I remember Google saying that's so small anyway, it doesn't matter, but that was right in front of everybody, and that the government seemingly took so long to jump in. I wonder if there's a lot of regret there.
I guess so. I think it was so new back in there. That was 2015 they took that decision.
It's 100 years ago in digital media.
Exactly. I think it was just so new at that point. So what? TubeMogul at that point was a publicly listed company. They were on the public markets for a year. And I think for fellow historians who are listening to this, it was in November 2016. That's when they decided to sell to Adobe.
Right.
And some relatively senior sources that I know that were there at the time did say it was that decision. It was that Google decision. That's what made them realize we have to go private. We can't exist as a public company anymore. It's not going to help us.
It's going to hurt us long term.
Yeah. So did you see it? Well, you were referencing before how the government takes a long time to move. I can remember in January 2020, for playing a game back in the day, I can remember at the IAB Winter Conference that year, speaking, and that was just in the media aftermath, and that was in January 2020, right?
Weeks before the world shut down, right?
Yeah. And Google at that point had just confirmed that they were going to retire support for third-party cookies in Chrome. So that's what everybody was industry was buzzing about prior to the pandemic. And I just remember being at that conference, speaking to a lot of people. I was in California at the time, and just saying to some people, "Oh, where are you going to after this?" And they were like, "Okay, off the record, the DOJ is hosting some kind of conference, so basically where they
interesting
kind kind of like what do members of parliament in the UK call it, like a salon where they kind of like invite people to come in and or their constituents to come in and air their grievances. So I know those talks were happening back then, and then what was it? It was in January 23. It took before the papers were filed for this current case.
To be fair, there was a lot of stuff going on in the interim.
So I just think it was the penny was beginning to drop. I don't know how these how things get put on the DOJ's radar. So, but I think to that point, which you mentioned 10 years ago, that it
was a very pro-tech environment too. 10 years ago, that was different mentality. Right. All right. Last thing, and this is again, I'm asking you kind of to speculate and share what you've been hearing from people, but there are a bunch of other cases from the DOJ and attorney generals and states against big tech. What do you think? Particularly, I guess, Meta and Amazon, are they watching this like, they might not have the same embarrassing emails coming out and documents, but the government does not want to help these advertising monopolies do what they do. I mean, I guess in the case of Amazon, they're maybe closer in having an ad tech stack where Facebook really doesn't. Or do you think there are ramifications if Google loses for those guys?
Absolutely. I think it would be completely naive to think otherwise.
Yeah.
I think anybody over there who's saying like, laugh at Google, sucks to be them. I don't think there's anybody doing that over Amazon towers or Meta towers. I mean, just look at what's happening in Europe, right? Google, all those big tech companies have been in the crosshairs of the European regulators for years now. Obviously, when it happens in the US, seems to just be a bit more real. So I think, it would be naive to think we're not going to see this playbook come out again from when it comes to those other big tech companies. So what? The only comparable case we've got for these antitrust cases that Alphabet, is currently going through is Microsoft.
Yeah.
I just think, it's only a matter of time before we're reading similar headlines about those other two. And I don't know, is there another one we can put in there? Yeah.
I don't think Pinterest is getting sued yet, but we'll see. But I think, I mean, the question will be over time. You potentially could see a dramatically different online advertising landscape if these cases don't drag on forever and nothing changes. That's going to be the thing that's going to be fascinating to watch. Ronan, awesome stuff. Thank you for taking the time out and sharing your insights here. Let's not wait 2 years next time. Let's do this again.
Okay. Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, and goodbye, listeners.
Thank you.